Hamilton argued that energy in the executive is the leading character in the definition of good government. Do you agree or disagree? Why? And what evidence can you offer to support your position? How would you describe energy in the executive? What are its essential ingredients? How would you define a feeble executive? And in what ways might a feeble executive be as dangerous as an overly energetic one? Why? You may begin.
James Madison, in Federalist Paper 51, argued that ambition must be made to counteract ambition. In order to achieve this balance, ambition must be present in every branch.
In Federalist number 70, Alexander Hamilton argued that an energetic executive branch is essential to the protection of the community against foreign attacks and to the security of liberty against the enterprises and assaults of ambition, of faction, and of anarchy.
Hamilton's proof arrived in his own lifetime when the executive response, or rather lack of it, was displayed in Shays' Rebellion when the Articles of Confederation limited existing executive powers.
Americans are familiar with examples of energetic executives, ranging from Abraham Lincoln, who sought to ensure a government of, by, and for the people,
To Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who told Americans in the grip of depression, the only thing to fear is fear itself.
And President Ronald Reagan, who told the Soviets to tear down this wall.
Hamilton, in Federalist 1, explained that good government was the product of reflection and choice, not accident and force.
However, executive energy comes with the consequence. Brutus in Anti-Federalist 70 argued that the office of president appeared to be clothed with such powers as are dangerous, explaining that the president was no more than an elected king.
In the end, this is ultimately balanced by the people themselves, for as Thomas Jefferson explained, I know of no safe repository of the ultimate power of society but the people.
The ingredients which constitute energy in the executive, according to Hamilton, are first, unity,
Second, duration.
Third, an adequate provision for support.
And fourth, competent powers.
James Wilson, a delegate from Pennsylvania to the Constitutional Convention of 1787, stated that unity in the executive, instead of being the fetus of monarchy, would be the best safeguard against tyranny. Hamilton, again in Federalist 71, refuted Brutus's elected king theory by saying wherever two or more persons are engaged in any common enterprise or pursuit, there is always the danger of difference of opinion.
Hamilton references duration as a key ingredient of energy in the executive because of the personal firmness of the executive magistrate in the employment of his constitutional powers and the balanced administration adopted within the duration.
While writing Federalist Paper 71, Hamilton also stated adequate provision of power is an ingredient in an energetic executive. It is evident that without proper attention to this article, the separation of the executive from the legislative department would be merely nominal and nugatory. During the Constitutional Convention, James Madison states, a government without a proper executive would be the mere trunk of a body, without arms or legs to act or move.
Hamilton went on to write in Federalist Paper 73 that competent powers are calculated to guard the community against the effects of faction, precipitancy, or of any impulse unfriendly to the public good, which may happen to influence a majority of that body. Our panel believes that independence and power of persuasions are qualifications of an energetic executive.
According to Hamilton, a feeble execution is another phrase for a bad execution.
A feeble executive can be seen as equal to an overly energetic executive.
As Hamilton put it, a government ill executed, whatever may be its theory, must be in practice a bad government.
The dangers of an over-energetic presidency are shown throughout American history with cases like President Adams and his energy in the Alien and Sedition Acts, and President Nixon's overly energetic campaigning, which led to possibly the greatest presidential scandal in American history.
Currently, President Obama is being accused of being both too energetic and too feeble.
Political debates over his use of executive orders, executive agreements, recess appointments, nominations, the extent of the president's war powers, bureaucratic oversight, and the passage of expansive social legislation have spurred this discussion.
In a recent column, former Congressman Lee Hamilton argued, the march toward presidential unilateralism, whether the president is a Democrat or a Republican, dangerously undercuts the constitutional system.
Hamilton continued to argue the problem with this debate is that it's missing a key piece of the equation.
Yes, our system needs a strong presidency, but it also needs a strong Congress.
We are now ready to take your questions.
My first question is going to be slightly off topic, but it's one of my favorite facts of Alexander Hamilton, particularly when people raise to me the discord that we see in our government today when Democrats don't talk to Republicans and Republicans Republicans won't work with Democrats. Could one of you please explain to the audience how Alexander Hamilton died?
Well, personally, I love history, and so I find this very fascinating. Thomas Jefferson's vice president was Aaron Burr, and he ran against Alexander Hamilton in a presidential election, but during the campaigning, Alexander Hamilton might have called Aaron Burr's daughter some nasty names during a speech. And so Aaron Burr shot Alexander Hamilton, and he died.
Cool. All right, now on to Federalist 70. One of the principles of Federalist 70 was unity in the executive branch, and we in fact have that in our federal government with really only one elected national executive officer, the president. Here in Wyoming, we have seen a pluralistic approach with respect to our governor and the superintendent of schools, Cindy Hill, and much of the ongoing struggles and challenges that have been going on between those two offices. Do you believe that Alexander Hamilton was right or wrong as it would apply to state government?
Well, clearly unity is important in any government. I mean, you yourself said that there's political strife occurring in Wyoming right now simply because the executive itself is not consolidated at the moment. However, the executive has power, just as our governor has done, to actually pick up some of that slack in the executive branch by stripping, in this case, Cindy Hill with some of her responsibilities. Additionally, what you see is some of the slack being picked up in the other branches. Actually, Mr. Patton just told me the other day that generally a strong executive is accompanied with a strong legislature and a strong judiciary as well.
It's a system of, well, going back to checks and balances with with the three, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. If one of them is more energetic than the other, it's going to fail in the system. I mean, it's the power is going to be lopsided, and complications are going to occur.
So do you think the ultimate solution to the struggles and strife with respect to the superintendent of schools is a state constitutional amendment eliminating that office?
I would say that the other two branches, legislature and the judiciary, have to closely be able to monitor that balance of power, because at the end of the day, regardless of intentions, you've got two other branches essentially wanting to legislate or to judge. And what you see is that simply by maybe eliminating one office on the part of an executive, as you said, you have to also ensure that the other branches are providing the correct balance with that.
You have to be sure too. One of the points was the provision of support that the executive provides. So, you're going to you don't want to cut back too much on the executive, because, like you said, it's the trunk. Without it, it's useless without the executive. So if you were to pass it, if the two other branches, as Jacob was saying, to compensate for it, were to overpass their power, it would struggle in its function. I mean, it's still function as long as there is an executive, but it would be highly diminished in their functionality.
So would a, go ahead.
I would like to add that.
Yeah, I've kind of had my full education in Cindy Hill right at the moment. Hamilton was without a doubt a Federalist, a strong Federalist. However, he wasn't there very much. He left very early before the other two members of New York returned. Why did he return?
But someone who...
Let me help you out. He returned and the other two didn't. Why and when did he return?
Well, I'm a person who also likes to leave the party early, but the reality is that Hamilton saw a big issue. In fact, you said that Hamilton was an immensely strong-willed Federalist. However, there was another faction, the Anti-Federalists, who, for example, wanted to include such provisions as the Bill of Rights within our Constitution, provide for perhaps more of the individual freedoms rather than the classical Republican philosophies that the Philadelphia Convention was comprised of. And Hamilton saw fit to return to the convention to ensure that the mistakes made in the Articles of Confederation were not repeated, that a strong Federalist government with three distinct branches were made, and that would ensure the best protection of the people.
Thank you. I'll help you out when we get through. Another question though, on following along with that. When Hamilton returned, he ended up being writing number 70 and number 71 and so forth. He got led into the conversation of impeachment. Why?
We appear not to know.
I'll say it and say time.